Hi, I'm JJ. Welcome. I am celebrating Sapphic September with a whole lot of book recommendations. I'm really excited because not only do I get to give you recommendations of my favorite Sapphic books, and I have read a lot, so there's a lot here that were my top tier for me anyway. So I have recommendations in pretty much any category you can think of, as well as two that are on my TBR. I won't get to them this month, but they're two that I'm most excited for in the future. And speaking of recommendations and stuff, some of these I have talked about before when I did my Pride Month favorite authors and favorite books. But many of these are not just my favorite Sapphic books, but some of my favorite books overall in general. So I'm really excited to get to share them all here. I will start with just regular romance first. So this is contemporary adult romance. The first one is On the Same Page by Haley Cass. And this one is a dual timeline between the two main characters. But what is unique about this one is that the one is the present, and then the other one is in the past, and they have been best friends, but the one has been in love with her since they were in college together. So you get to see her journey of falling in love with her friend in the past timeline, and why it's so heartbreaking and stuff, interacting with her and doing different things with her in this timeline, as the other one, who has no clue about that, falls in love with her in this timeline. So I just thought it was really really well done and fun, and just a really good story. And like all of these recommendations, they're very in depth. I'm a very character driven person, so they're usually got a lot of meat to them, a lot of sometimes darkness and stuff. And speaking of that, that would describe this book, Ribbonwood by Ruby Landers. I read this book quite a while ago, and I still think about it regularly. It's interesting because it's the regular enemies to lovers type of thing, except so they went to school together, and their interactions were completely misunderstood because they were going by society and interacting based on who other people told them they were. And so one of the girls was popular, but she was always gossiped about for marrying an older guy right out of high school. And what's really interesting is they flip that on its side and just show how maybe she wasn't, the slut or whatever they used to call her back then, but she was being taken advantage of by an older man. And so society still sees her as one way. And I just really enjoy how she subverts that victim mentality, because she lets people keep thinking the worst of her, as she's silently helping all the women in town who need to escape bad situations from bad men. So I was not expecting anything like this when I read it, and I just really thoroughly enjoyed it. So for contemporary YA, I have Ashley Herring Blake. I could have put her in some of my favorite for adult contemporary, and also she would be listed as my favorite middle grade author as well, when it comes to Sapphic characters and stuff. She has a really great middle grade book. I couldn't find it. It's Ivy Aberdeen's Letter to the World, and that was a very good kind of coming to terms with her sexuality and herself, and not knowing how to express it in her family. So with her family, so she writes a journal. A tornado hits town, and her letters and her journals and all her deepest secrets are scattered for the whole world to see, and she's terrified of that being known to the world, and then having to explain those thoughts and feelings to her family. And so she kind of has this division within her family until she starts to accept herself better and grow and learn about herself, as well as have a deeper connection with her family. So for a middle grade book, that was really good. And then for the YA one, since I got sidetracked, I really enjoyed this one. It's a Girl Made of Stars. And I know I talked about this one before. This is also darker. So there's these two twins, very close, a boy and a girl. And the girl's brother gets accused of raping his girlfriend, who is the sister's best friend. And she has to deal with what that means for her, because she believes the friend. And what does that mean about her brother? Does it mean all of her memories and all her closeness and stuff with her brother was wrong? She starts to try to reevaluate it on a different scale, and also just starts to wonder about what else she missed, and what else she's hiding from herself, and how she's keeping that from others, and stuff like that. And she has, interactions and stuff with her ex-girlfriend, and there might be a new interest with her, but she doesn't have time for any of that because she's also focusing on this other big drama around her. So it's a very big coming of age story, but a very deeply moving family saga, because you see the brother, and he's not this monster, but he did do what he did, and you have to come to grips with how you would react if it was someone you were close to. And I think it was delicately and beautifully done, and also very hard to read at times. Very worth it though. The next two kind of go hand in hand. These two are these are also YA, so Taking Flight and Georgia Peaches and Other Forbidden Fruit. And I've actually read both of these multiple times. So they both deal with faith and your sexuality. And so this one deals with this girl, Lauren, who kept getting in trouble and stuff at home, and her parents sent her away to this kind of not quite a treatment center, but she's living with a guy who does therapy, and working in the farm, on the farm and stuff with the family, doing hard labor, and kind of getting back to nature, and kind of understanding herself. The trouble is that family is very religious, and she's developing a crush on her, for the time she's there, roommate girl, the daughter of her therapist, who's also very religious. And so that was portrayed really, I don't know, I just really was drawn to this book when I read it. I read it years ago, and kind of keep coming back to it. So on that note, so this one dealt with being scared of your sexuality when you're really highly religious, and having to come to terms with what that means for you. Whereas this one, the girl who's queer in this one, her dad is actually a pastor, and she's very religious and very involved with the church. So her sexuality and her faith are not at odds. But when her dad gets remarried and she goes into this new town, she decides to not be out there because she's helping on his talk show and stuff, you know, for teens in faith and stuff. But it gets harder and harder for her to hold those two separate, her two pieces of herself separate. And what that means for her growing relationship with one of the girls who's also religious in town. And what I really like about this is she has a very beautiful relationship with her love interest's brother, who he had a problem. I can't remember if it was when he was born or when he was younger, but so he had like lack of oxygen and stuff to his brain, so he's underdeveloped mentally, and so he would normally get picked on in other schools, but his sister is very popular, and she makes sure that nobody picks on him, and he's such a lovable and fantastic character. And this girl who's moving into town and wanting to stay under the radar and not you know, get involved with anyone, especially since she's trying to hide her sexuality, she sparks up a friendship with that boy that's just so pure and sweet, and one of the highlights of this book. So speaking of on the religious aspect, this is a memoir, so my nonfiction recommendation, and this is Hijab Butch Blues. So this is a memoir about a queer Muslim woman, and each chapter she talks about a different verses or different teachings within the Quran, and how that helps her, or how her faith stays strong, but how she uses her faith to understand her identity, to love herself better, and strengthen her faith. So taken together, these three are very interesting looks at sexuality and religion. Gotta find more room here. And then I did list another one going back to the YA, but also a separate category, just because I believe Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice retellings or remakes deserve its separate category. And so there was a book called Most Ardently by Susan Messler Evans, and that book is a contemporary take on Pride and Prejudice, and one of the most enjoyable retellings that I've read. I don't really need to give you too much here because it follows all the main cues through the story, but it kind of addresses some of the flaws that I found in the original, where I really don't like how Kitty is forced to marry a guy who basically manipulates her and runs off with her. Like, how is that not statutory rape? How is that not kidnapping? How is that not like anything that's really bad? And instead she's forced to marry him, and the family considers that not detriment to their name. I know, but this addresses that very well, and actually calls it what it is, which I thought was necessary and fascinating. The next one I have is for historical fiction recommendation, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I know this is talked about a lot, and people probably think it's very overhyped, but I just really liked the way that it was written. You know, it's kind of told through an interview as this woman is, you know, later in life, and before she dies, she wants to finally tell her full story. And I just liked, I liked seeing her side of things beyond what the tabloids would have been and stuff like that. And I am looking forward to when they developed this. I can't remember if it's a movie or a TV show, but either way, I'm gonna definitely tune in. I thought it was well written. I have recently read another Taylor Jenkins Reid book, Daisy and the Six, but I wasn't, that was still interview-ish and, like the whole book, but I thought this one was done much better. I didn't like the format for that one, so if you don't like that style, you might not enjoy this, but I know that I did. So now for the biggest categories, I have a bunch of, I love sports, and I have a bunch of sports theme romances that I didn't want to put with the contemporary ones. The first one being Interference by Zoe Reed. Now this was just probably very important to me, being one of the first queer books I had ever read. And I really connected with the characters and stuff in this story. It deals with hockey and how there's this one girl who plays and doesn't have the best relationship with her family ever since she came out. She's being kept away from her little brother. And it also reveals that she had abuse in her past by an uncle. So there are some harsh trigger warning themes that you may need to look into. But I liked how she still fought to try to interact with her brother and how she tried to keep that relationship. And there was her female, the love interest in here, who also had trauma in her past. And so when you meet her, she is mute. She doesn't talk, and she hasn't talked for years. And it starts out as this fun challenge for the one girl to try to be the one to get her to talk. But then when she experiences her own upsets and kind of traumatic moment in her life, she kind of goes silent and doesn't interact much with the girl and push her. And that's what causes the girl to kind of open up to her once she stops pushing and once she stops making it a game. And then they're able to have this really deep and meaningful relationship develop after that. And I don't know, I read this years ago, and I just I still really think about it and enjoy it. And then there's another author who writes a lot of sports themed stories, Nicole Pyland. And so my three favorites that I chose were Crashing into Love, Spin Serve, and Side by Side. So Crashing into Love is about snowboarding, and there's these two competitors who miss out on the Olympics because one literally crashed into the other one and knocked her out. Accidentally, of course, but that other one has always held a grudge against her ever since. And now they meet years later accidentally, and they start to at least understand each other, and the one decides to start training again. And I liked the depth of it. Like, you kind of get this surprise that I don't want to reveal about one of the characters in the meantime of having quit the Olympics and stuff like that. And I also really just love Olympic themed books on top of being books about sports. So I think that one, I read it just this past Olympic season. Even though it was the Summer Olympics, I had read it just because I'm always obsessed with the Olympics. Spin Serve is about a beach volleyball player and a sideline reporter. And it's a lot more than that, but it's, just also a basic love story. But I just like I said, I just really enjoy the sports themes of it, and I thought that one was a fun, breezy read. It still had depth, but it wasn't as dark as a lot of these that I'm mentioning. The same with Side by Side, and that is kind of reminds me of one of my all-time favorite movies, Cutting Edge, where you have a like a hockey player and a figure skater who have to then be pairs, partners to try to compete. And it's exactly what you would think, but it's fun and it's sweet, and you know, it's got the not quite enemies to lovers thing going on, but they have a long way to go before not only do they trust each other to actually be able to work in pairs, but to then eventually have a relationship together. So both have a lot to growing and stuff to do. And I did miss when I was talking about Ruby Landers. She also had, like, basically, this is my favorite of her, but you can pick up any of her books. She does have a trilogy that starts with Falls from Grace, that follows a same friend group and family and stuff, that I really enjoyed, because you get to see them progress within each of the 3 stories and really connect with those characters. But I still like this one better, but I don't think you can go wrong with her books at all, just like with Ashley Herring Blank. And then the next categories are the ones that are just my all-time favorite books in general, when it comes to fantasy, sci-fi, and the like. So starting with sci-fi, and I know that I talked about this several times, including with my Pride recommendations, but Crier's War. It is a duology, and it deals with human, automatons, and you kind of get the themes of what it really means to be human when the girl who is seeking revenge on perceived losses and the loss of her family and everything, who becomes consumed with vengeance and basically lacks feeling and emotions. Whereas the automaton, who's considered broken because she starts having feelings and starts understanding emotions and tries to identify and understand people. And so just watching their parallel development as one is human and one is not, but they're both perceived broken in their own type of way. So the one is broken because she lost all of her emotions and her feelings, and the other one's considered broken because she's a machine who should not have feelings. And just you have political intrigue, and you have a bunch of great world building, as well as just thematic understanding of not just what it takes to be human, but who deserves those rights, the rights to be human. They're trying to, the automatons are built to replace us because humans are considered flawed, and the humans that are fighting back, and like all this other stuff on top of a really gorgeous and beautiful love story. And then these ones, I guess I would consider the first 2 of these sci-fi and horror, and then this one is just kind of straight up horror, alternate reality. So this one, I actually don't have a physical copy of the first book, but this is the second book. So this is The Last Soul Among Wolves, and the first book is actually called The Last Hour Between Worlds. And I have not read this one. This is one I'm actually going to read and discuss further in a different video when I'm talking about my Sapphic September reads for this month. So I'm not going to talk much in detail about this book. But in general, it's a really interesting world building where you have, well, alternate reality type of things, but they're all like below the surface. So you can go like 7 layers deep and each one gets more bizarre. And this main character has to solve a murder and then multiple murders because the people down below are playing a game with the people up above and trying to affect our reality. And each one is a different like time zone. So by the time it resets every hour as it switches through the next layer. If this makes any sense, I'm very bad at explaining this story in particular. But she has then those like 6 or 7 hours to solve these murders, and it's kind of like being stuck in a Groundhog Day event where she interacts with different people and then they die, and then they're not the dead ones next time somebody else is dead, but she has to try to remember what was different in between each time because she's one of the only ones who remembers anything. And she learns that if she does not solve who's doing it and why and stop it, by the time it goes through that whole scenario, through all of the time zones between each world, then those deaths will stick. And she does not want that to happen, obviously, because some people she really cares about die within each new time of, bringing time back and stuff. So very bad at describing it because it's one of the most unique and interesting books I've ever read. And what's fun is she has to deal with her rival, who she has feelings for, but kind of broke her trust and broke her heart. So she doesn't know if she can trust her, but she's the only other one who starts to learn what's going on. So she has to trust her. And, that's a fun aspect to it as well. But I'll give you a lot more when I read this one. And hopefully by then I'll be able to explain them a little bit better. The next one is Gideon the Ninth. And this is a 4-book series. The 4th book is not yet out. And I am going to be honest, this is the best one. You kind of read the other ones because, you want to know what's happening in the story. And sometimes you just kind of got to go along with the ride because you don't always know what's happening. And I'm sure that it's all going to be resolved in the end. But as for now, we're kind of left in this limbo of what's actually happening. But this one makes a lot of sense. And this one could be a really great standalone if you're not interested in getting into a whole series. It's also, until I read the one I was just talking about, was one of the most unique books that I have read. And I actually have multiple copies of this. I have the hard copy version that I keep just on, for myself. But it's got the black painted edges and stuff. And then I also listen to it on audiobook, and the narrator for that is absolutely fantastic. But this story is also really hard to describe because it's like a horror story, a mystery, and then you also have, sci-fi and fantasy thrown in. You have magic and like almost fight for death type of thing, like Hunger Games, but not quite, because they're not the ones killing each other. Somebody else is killing them, and they have to solve this big mystery. And you got political intrigue, and you got really wonderful world building because they're all from different planets, and they all have different types of things that they're known for. And Gideon and Harrow are 2 of the most interesting characters. And a lot of people, Gideon has a very sarcastic voice and sense of humor that you have to, get and enjoy to fully grasp these. But if you can get through that, knowing what's to come and knowing how great the world building is and how fun the fantasy and horror and all that stuff is, Harrow is actually a very fantastic character, and I think that you would just really enjoy her backstory once you get through it, because she's definitely worth the read. I have a lot of fan art of these two on my wall as well, just because, I mean, the art for these books is fantastic. I don't know, Harrow's is very small, but her book is even more beautiful than Gideon's. But so the fan art, like the people who have made art for those, just because they're such fascinating characters, have astounded me. I also talked about this book already. This is also a duology, Dread Nation. And this is, I would consider it horror, but it's also historical fiction. It's an alternate reality or alternate history where the dead after the Civil War, the dead from Gettysburg start rising, and they're zombies. And so you deal with zombies, you deal with racism, you deal with a bunch of freed slaves who were then trained to be zombie hunters so they can protect the white people. And you just have this fantastic character and world building, and just, I don't know, I think about this constantly, and I compared it in my other video to Sinners, just because the themes are very similar, and they're dealing with monsters, which in literature and in movies and stuff typically means like a loss of freedom or a loss of innocence, rather. And so it kind of, you still have those monster elements where, you know, what are they losing? Parts of it, you know, they're losing parts of themselves. They're losing people they love. They're losing this sense of safety, and especially their sense of freedom when they were, you know, they're free, but they're not really free. And now they have to actually fight for their lives all over again to try to survive. And there's a whole lot going on, and so interesting. Dread Nation, I highly recommend it. And now they're all the rest are fantasy. I'm going to start with one that I forgot to grab. She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker, and that's also a duology. I finally read He Who Drowned the World this year, and it was even better than the first one. But it's kind of a retelling in Chinese history about this woman, or this girl who pretends to be a man, and she becomes a monk, and then a monk who becomes emperor, and just this really fantastic story where she then has to save face and stuff, marries this girl who knows her secret, and they genuinely start to, you know, have a connection and fall in love. But you also just have this really strong female character, and then her main kind of rival in the story that she's always against is actually a eunuch, and he's one of the most fascinating characters as well. Just that whole story is so well written. It's so historically rich, and great descriptions, and just overall really well done. So the next ones, I talked about this series already when I did my showing of my dagger that I made, but A Dark and Hollow Star. So I won't talk much about the series as a whole. There's 4 books. They're all quite thick. It deals with all the magical things. So you have fairies are the main character. My favorite character, Nausicaa, was a fury, and she, you get her whole back history and everything, and that's fascinating. And then you have so many other characters in here who are all different identities of queerness and stuff, all over the scale. But the main story is with so she's former Fury, and her love interest is part Fae herself, and she is who we kind of enter the world through, because she always thought she was human, and she was aware of the magic side. She just thought she didn't inherit those genes from her mom. She thought she kind of was a bit left out. So she grew up in the vicinity of the Fae realm, but we get to follow her as she gets thrust right into the center of it, and that's how we get to learn about all this magic and the whole wide political political world of all the Fae. I just thought that whole world building was fantastic, because it's more like urban fantasy, where they're still part of the real world. It's just kind of like Percy Jackson and the Olympians and stuff, where there's just this other world that kind of mirrors our own, or is there but mortals can't see it, type of thing. So that's very similar to that feeling. The next one is a doorstopper of a book, The Priory of the Orange Tree. And this actually has a couple of prequels to it, but this is a definite standalone. There's multiple storylines in here. So you have assassin, you have like a princess, queen type of character, and then you have one who learns to ride dragons, because there are dragons in here. I will say there is one storyline that I found boring, whose point of view, when you get to him, you kind of are like waiting for all the rest to happen. But minus him, who's got a few chapters here and there, the rest of the book is worth it. I just wish we could have gotten through those chapters somehow, with either a better character or just a more interesting way of showing his character, because he was very unlikable. But yeah, if you want dragons, if you want sapphic romance, if you want enemies to lovers type of thing, if you want a really cool dragon rider, and just a great backstory and discussion about religion and how different branches and how they develop their truth from a religion, or they take their religion as truth and they start taking prophecy as destiny and as fate, rather than their interpretation of their religion. And then you also get to see how religion can corrupt. You get all these fracturing different religious sects who think that theirs is the absolute right way, which in a fantasy world, especially one as richly drawn as this one, was really partly like you get to see that, yes, that's what happens and stuff in the real world, but you're still lost so much in the story that that part becomes part of the intrigue. Is so much went wrong by their religious rivalry, their interpretations, misinterpretations, all these interesting factors that just wove together to make a fantastic story. And I know I talked about these next three, the last three, a lot. Cute Mutants, very odd name, but I really enjoyed this series. There's 5 in the first series, and then they did like a sequel book following this. And then there's kind of a bunch of spin-offs and stuff that you can follow different characters. So there's a lot of rich world building in here. I really loved the X-Men. I still read all the comics and stuff. So this one is particularly close to my heart, but it also deals with so many different relationships on the queer spectrum. So you have a poly ship, you have a character who's non-binary, you have another sapphic ship where one of them is asexual. So, and then you have, everywhere and all in between, all different races, ethnicities, sexualities, just a whole bunch of great characters who form this really beautiful found family as they group together because of their newfound mental, or not mental, but mutant abilities. And so I just really liked the exploration of the main character most likely being autistic or somehow not, well, atypical, how you would say it. And so her magic, or her mutant ability, her magicness is she can talk to and communicate with inanimate objects, which is fascinating because it happens throughout the story of like her developing these really profound friendships with inanimate objects. And it shows just how lonely she was until she started becoming part of something. And then that part of something grew into her, not just, or them, sorry, them not just having a friend group and a girlfriend, but also just finally accepting fully themselves and all their weirdness and awkwardness. And the found family in this story is one of my absolutely favorite. There are some characters, you go through it and some good ones die. So it feels so, real to life when you finally get that connection, you finally find your person, and you don't guarantee that you're going to have a whole lot of time with them, because they are a superhero team, or they try to be. They're very bad at it for the first couple of books. They just fumble their way through because they're still just teenagers. But they're dealing with some really heavy stuff because you're dealing with, capitalistic people trying to take over. You deal with homophobia. You deal with racism. You deal with all kinds of stuff in the real world, but also in their trying to save the world aspect. They get to see the best in each other, but also the worst in humanity as they grow in their powers, grow as a team, and start to be seen by the world. But then also, the more they're seen, the more they're misunderstood, and the more people can try to tell their story for them. And when that's the bad people telling your story, what does that mean for you? How does that shape your identity and who you thought you were when you start to question if you are on the right side of things? So fun books, but there's so much depth, so much warmness, excitement, adventure, a lot of magic and different once they find the mutants, then they see this bigger world around them, and there's all these different races and mutants and kind of like a alternate worlds type of things that they meet through the course of these books. So the next one is one of my favorites, and I'm so disappointed because book 3 comes out at the end of this month. It comes out on the 30th. I've already had it pre-ordered since February, but I won't be able to read it for Sapphic September because I won't get it in time. But the series is The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. And so this is the book 1. The series is actually The Magic of the Lost. And so this deals with I guess it's a fantasy world, but it's basically inspired or set by the African nations trying to rise up about their French colonizers. And so it starts with like a rebellion against the crown. So the main character, hates everything about what the crowd represents. But then you have the princess coming to power, and how she loves her country and she thinks that she's going to change the world, and all the times that she's trying to do things, she's doing it from her point of view, from her privilege, and thinking that she's going to make a difference for everybody, and obviously keeps making mistake after mistake because she doesn't take into account that they don't even want her there, so it doesn't matter what she tries to do. But these two have to eventually form a very tentative alliance to try to both get what they want. And that leads to them developing feelings, but still a lack of trust, especially when based on the surroundings and the circumstances and all this political agendas and this rising up and these rebellions that are taking place, and then this magic that's being found and hopefully used against the crown. They're forced to take definite sides, and those sides are pulling them further and further apart, but also not technically bringing them closer to their own personal goals either. So they're stuck in this limbo of what they're supposed to do, and if they do still need each other to be able to do it and accomplish it. And sometimes the things that they thought they wanted are changing because the people around them have forced them to see things that they didn't understand or didn't see before, and realizing that their ideal versions of what they wanted don't fully mesh with reality. Very deep and thoughtful, and I'm really excited for the next one of these. And then my last one, I know this is a long story and this is also a long book. This is also a trilogy. The first book in the trilogy is called The Jasmine Throne. The trilogy is Burning Kingdoms. And I do have to be honest, this first book is fantastic. The second book I felt was better. The third book, I was honestly disappointed in the ending, just because I had so much momentum going forward with how much I loved the first two, that it was a bit disappointing. I think overall it's still a really great series, especially the first two books are some of my favorite stories. And so this is also deals very much with religion and how differing religions play a part in these breakings of these cultures. And it also deals a bit with type of colonization, where these one faction and city was forced to get rid of their religion and basically submit to the rule of the people who overthrew them. And in doing so, they lost a bit of that magic and stuff that they believed in. But now that magic is awakening and it's demanding to be noticed. And they're realizing that these gods that they thought that they worshipped may not be these benevolent gods that were just, thoughtfully giving them powers to fight back, but maybe they're possibly more of a true enemy than the world that they were fighting against. And so you have these clashing cultures, you have these really frustrating views on how to save the world, and even the ones who are doing the colonizing, the whole burning kingdoms idea is that they believe that women have to sacrifice themselves, burning on an altar selflessly to save the rest of the world around them. And the princess who wants to be emperor, who doesn't want to be one of the sacrifices, might have to look for another ally, and that ally is one of the people that they've been colonizing, one of the people whose magic they stole away. And just like the other book, can you truly trust that that alliance when they both want so different things, and they both their competing goals are against each other in the end, and possibly only one can come out ahead with everything they want. So it's great magic, great storytelling, very complex characters, very dark at times, but also fascinating read. And as you can see, I read a lot of all kinds of different genres, so I'm hoping that you found at least one of your preferred genres in these recommendations. And I hope that if you read any of these, or if you have any recommendations for me based on the books that I have mentioned, that you'll please let me know. And I look forward to sharing the books that I do read for Sapphic September when I do my book recommendations and reviews later on this month. But until then, enjoy, happy reading, and happy Sapphic September.